שלא אחר ועריך אמוני סבנדו ואותיו כדבר אדוני.
This class will probably take us 2 classes because it's a longer piece. So if you could keep the handout till next week, that would be save us some paper.
Is Beth going to Washington tomorrow?
Some of us are. Yeah.
You got a plane or a bus?
We're all going different ways.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whoever they can get there.
Okay. This is a text today that is a continuation of the unit that we began 5 or 6 weeks ago, on rabbinic authority. We've seen a lot of texts that have dealt with rabbinic authority. Very famous and well-known texts from the Talmud about where rabbis derive their authority from, the challenges of interpretation, with little lessons interwoven throughout the story. This is also a very foundational and important story in the Talmud about the creation of the first rabbinic academies and the destruction of the temple. Even though the destruction of the temple happens prior to the editing of the Talmud, the Mishnah, which is the primary book of Jewish law upon which the Talmud is based, makes almost no mention of the destruction of the Talmud, which is really crazy. If you think about it, you would expect that such a book would react theologically somehow to the destruction of the temple, a huge, huge event in Jewish history, one which we think about until today. But we have to wait for the Talmud to find some reflections on the destruction of the temple. I'm talking about the destruction of the Second Temple by the Romans in the year 70 CE, right? And the subsequent wars. There were many wars that happened after the temple was destroyed, including the famous Bar Kokhba rebellion, where the Jews were basically expelled from Jerusalem and not allowed to live in Jerusalem anymore. That's the second Jewish war in the year 120 or so. This is a text that's very familiar because on Tisha B'Av, which is the day where you read of the destruction of the temple, in the book of Lamentations, right, the destruction of the first temple. It's the day that commemorates the destruction of the temple, Tisha B'Av. The Talmud says you're not allowed to study Torah because it's a day of mourning, and studying of Torah is not appropriate for a day of mourning. But what's interesting is that they give a couple of exceptions. The law is you're not allowed to study Torah except for 2 or 3 texts, and this is one of them. So we tend to be very familiar with this text because it's a sad one, it is appropriate, and it deals with the destruction of the temple. From Tractate Gittin, and it delves into the question of why Jerusalem was destroyed, the events that led up to the destruction of the temple and of Jerusalem, and the establishment of the rabbinic academies. It is an important text because prior to the destruction of the temple, the seat of power, the seat of authority, was within the temple hierarchy. The high priests and the priestly family were the ones that held the power. They made the decisions. Very centralized, hierarchical system, and also a system that was passed on. How do you become a priest? You have to be born into the priesthood, which became actually a source of tremendous controversy because some people wanted access to power who were not from the priestly family. So they, found other ways to latch onto power, including King Herod, right, who becomes sort of the head of the temple, even though he's not the high priest, by saying, no problem, I don't have to be the high priest, I'll be the king, but I'll make sure that the priest that I appoint does everything that I tell him to do. Right? A nice easy way to get around that hierarchy rule. Anyway, the corruption of the priesthood. Yes, Marlene?
It sounds like the U.S. Supreme Court.
Interesting. The corruption of the temple was extreme at the time, and we're going to read today a famous text that talks about why the temple was destroyed, the interactions between rabbis and priests, and how eventually the authority, the center of authority, moves away from Jerusalem, away from the priestly class, and into the hands of the rabbis. Let's start on the English, right? I always give you the page from the Vilna Shas in case you want to look at it. Yes?
Do you have more?
I don't have, yes I do. Okay, so I think that it's a long text. I think it's going to take 2 classes, so I think we have to wait till next week to see the video. Sorry. On account of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, Jerusalem was destroyed. This text is also known famously as the account of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. Akamsa ubar Kamsa avid Yerushalayim. For there are 2 men, right? One is named Kamsa and one is named the son of Kamsa. What's a Kamsan in Hebrew? Someone who's cheap.
Someone who's cheap.
Cheap. Kamsan. Yeah. Yeah. For a certain man whose friend was friend Kamsa and whose enemy was Bar Kamsa, made a party. So there's a certain unnamed person who throws a party, and there were 2 people who lived in Jerusalem. One was his friend Kamsa, and another was his enemy Bar Kamsa. Who's learned this story before? 2 hands. Okay, Robert, I'm glad you remembered. I was hoping your hand would go up because The party host said to his servant, "Go and bring Kamsa." The servant went and brought Bar Kamsa. The party host found Bar Kamsa sitting there and said to Bar Kamsa, "See, you are my enemy. What are you doing here? Get up and get out." Bar Kamsa said to the party host, "Since I have already come here, let me stay, and I will pay you for whatever I eat and drink." Reasonable, right? Just let me stay. Why do you think he wants to stay? Why would he want to stay after getting such a bad reception? To hear what's going on, maybe. What else? Why would he want to stay?
To be seen there.
To be seen at the party? Close? I mean, look, these are all, I'm saying close. I don't know what the right answer is, but I have my own
To remedy the
hunch.
relationship.
What's that?
To remedy the relationship.
Maybe he wants to remedy the relationship. True, it doesn't sound like it. He says, just let me stay here, I'll pay for my own food and drink. Why?
Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, father and son.
No,
They're not-
different people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe he has friends there that he wants to see.
He has friends there, but go further. Maybe he wants to see them, and what's going to happen if he's kicked out of the party?
Be a
Right. So I think that the real reason he's asking to stay is because this is a public space. And yes, he probably has friends there. And he would be humiliated if he was kicked out of the party in front of everyone. Right? So you could imagine the two of them go into a corner and one says leave and the other side says, look, everybody's here. Please don't embarrass me in front of everybody. I'll pay for my food and drink. Just let me stay. That's what I think. Remember, in Jewish law, humiliating somebody, embarrassing somebody in public is a very serious transgression. The party host said to Bar Kamsa, no. Bar Kamsa said to the party host, I'll give you half the cost of the party. This is why I think that he wants to, the reason he wants to stay is because he doesn't want to be embarrassed. Like, what else is going to motivate somebody to pay that much money to stay at a party? I'm sure it's because he just doesn't want to be embarrassed in front of everybody. And usually you would say to your friend who doesn't want you at his party, fine, I'll leave. If you don't want me, I'll just go. So there must be some reason he wants to stay there, or some reason he really doesn't want to leave. The party host said to Bar Kamsa, no. Bar Kamsa said to the party host, I'll give you the cost of the entire party. The party host said to Bar Kamsa, no, and took Bar Kamsa with his hand and stood him up and threw him out. Bar Kamsa said to himself, since the rabbis were sitting there and did not protest against the party host, this shows they agree with him. I will go and inform against them to the government. This is the opening scene of the party. Any comments about what happens here? I want you to notice there's a pattern that appears very often in Jewish sources where a negotiation is taking place. I'll pay for me. I'll pay for half the party. I'll pay for the whole party. What does it show? That someone wants to be flexible. Somebody wants to be flexible and, help. And another person wants to be rigid. I want you to see the difference between flexibility and rigidity, stubbornness. Other thoughts about this passage? Yeah?
So, I don't necessarily agree with you that he was so willing to pay so much money out of fear of being humiliated. I think, judging from where he went with it, that he perhaps had a dafka quality. Like he was perhaps almost setting it up for her fight.
So you're saying maybe he was trying to pay half the party in order to provoke the rabbis to intervene in the dispute between him and the host.
Perhaps, but I won't.
Interesting.
So I'm not an authority.
No. That's maybe he wasn't so innocent and played this game, hoping that the rabbis would force the man to be flexible himself. It could be. The only thing is that's an expensive game to play. He's gonna have to pay for the whole party. He was ready to pay for the whole party just to settle a relationship with somebody that he doesn't like. So the Talmud would have had to tell us, well, what is it that what was so special about this relationship that Bar Kamsa wanted to repair, right? We don't know that. Could be, but we don't know. That's why I take the view that it's about flexibility and stubbornness. It's also about who's invited and who is not invited.
So I'm just trying to get this straight. So they both have the same name. It just happens that they have the same name, but one has
Kamsa and Bar Kamsa.
But they're not.
Think today, correct. Think today of, we make this mistake all the time. Greenbaum and Greenstein, right? And I told Carmela to invite Greenstein, and I hate Greenstein. I meant Greenbaum.
But you
and they,
the other one anyway.
And she made the mistake and invited them, and now how do we get out of this?
It's her.
Right? Always.
The fact that it's mentioned that you're going to go to the government, to me, is not flexibility and rigidity. It means many political undertones of what.
Right, so we have to be, that's how the story ends. And we have to be very aware of how serious a step that is to inform. Just like I say, embarrassing somebody publicly is a terrible, terrible sin in Jewish law. Informing someone against the government, a non-Jewish government, ratting on somebody, is also a very serious transgression. But why does he do it? He doesn't do it on account of the party host. And this is what's very important to understand about this passage. Why does he go to the government? Why is he going to the government? It's not because he's offended by the party host. Why?
He's offended by
Right.
the rabbi.
So you remember I talked about the corruption in Jerusalem at the time. I'm talking from a historical perspective. So that's why I find this story to be fascinating. Because even though it's not blatant, it doesn't blatantly say the rabbis were corrupt, right? It insinuates that the rabbis don't stand up for justice. They've stopped doing what is right and fair. Rabbis should know that it is forbidden to humiliate somebody publicly. They see a public humiliation going on right in front of them, and they don't speak up. What is beautiful about this story to me, even at the beginning, is how familiar it seems. First of all, the fact that the dispute breaks out about who's invited and who is not invited. I will tell you, this is every time you're planning a party, every time you're getting people together, every time the shul wants to do something special, every time the UJA wants to have a special dinner. This is a very serious issue. People are hurt when they are not invited to something that they feel they should be invited to. It's like in 2,000 years this remains. You think it's a silly thing about who to invite and who not to invite. But I know families in this shul that still won't talk to each other. And it's exactly this issue. She didn't invite me to this, and I didn't invite her, and then it just goes on and on and on. Who's included and who's not included. Some people will say that the invitation to a party was a way to minimize almost in the same way that we've seen in previous stories, like the oven of Achnai. Like the oven of Achnai is a very minute, sort of a very esoteric issue in Jewish law, and it's a way to say in the oven of Achnai that the fighting between the rabbis was over nothing. And some people say the same thing about this story. It's to show that the fighting between that broke out between Bar Kamsa and the rabbis was about nothing. And that's possible. But I also think inviting, who you invite and who you don't invite is not nothing. It's really, really significant. And then the other part of this story that I feel is so familiar to me, so contemporary, is how angry we get over a bystander who refuses to speak up for what is right. Don't go to the Holocaust and everything that's been written about bystanders in Switzerland, and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about family disputes, small family disputes, where I'm just as angry at the people who didn't take my side, even though they're not directly involved in whatever it is that we're fighting about. You didn't speak up for me. You didn't come to my aid, and I will never forget that. And I'm almost more angry at the friends who didn't come to my aid than I am at the stranger who I'm actually having this dispute with. When you talk about what hurts people, these are on the top of the list of what hurts people. Not getting included, not receiving an invitation, the friends who you counted on to stand up for you who were MIA. That's what really hurts people. And I don't think it's a little dispute. I think it's very real. Saying Jerusalem became a place where everybody was fighting with everybody else. And the rabbis who were expected to be sources of peace and cooperation with everyone ended up becoming irrelevant. Tools of others. Maybe since the person throwing the party was probably a wealthy person, I'm guessing he was, when somebody else says, I'm going to pay for your whole party. If the person was needy, it would have taken him up on that offer in a second. But since he did not, I'm guessing he was a wealthy person, so I imagine in my head the host of the party being a very wealthy person, having the rabbis in his pocket, inviting the rabbis over to their home to be close to them, and then a dispute that breaks out right in front of them. And they are silent because they don't want to offend the host that invited them. There's a lot of power dynamics in this story. They don't want to offend the host who invited them. They don't want to speak up. They don't want to get involved. And they end up becoming implicated in an argument over who's invited to a party and who's not. And the decision of Bar Kamsa is not to inform on the host of the party. It's to blow up the whole thing. Right? When you're so angry at the system, you don't just go after the individuals that you're having a dispute with. You go after the whole system. So, blow up the whole house by informing against the rabbis. Yes?
I was just going to say, when the host says, you are my enemy,
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to be annoyed with someone or not like them, but to use the word enemy is also pretty harsh.
Very good. Very good. Especially when that enemy, who I guess knows that he's his enemy, came to the party probably hoping that maybe it was some act of reconciliation. So imagine you're all hopeful coming to the party, and then this is what you get in return. You are my enemy. You don't even have a name. Get out. And I don't care how much you protest and how much you want to be flexible and how much you want to save your face. Get out. And the party host doesn't just kick him out. He takes him by his hand. Why do you think it says he takes him by his hand? Because it's public. Right? That this whole story is being set up to lead to the rabbinic lack of response. If this was a private conversation between, the host and Bar Kamsa, maybe they could get away. The rabbis would say, "We didn't see, we didn't know. He came in and then he left. We saw you talking to him and then he left." It's like the Real Housewives, this sort of drama. No. He got picked up by the host in front of everybody. That's not normal. Picked up by the host and tossed out. So the rabbis cannot claim that they didn't know what was going on. Okay, let's keep going. Bar Kamsa went and said to Caesar. So look at the footnote. Here, emperor could be meant. The rabbis didn't fully understand the names or titles of various power players in Rome. It is quite possible that they thought Caesar meant emperor. This leads to an ambiguity as to who it was that is sending Nero. We'll get to that in the end. According to contemporaneous historical accounts, Nero was emperor from 54 to 68. followed by 4 emperors in quick succession in the year 69. The last of these was Vespasian. Vespasian was then followed by Titus in 79. So the rabbis were not great historians by the time this story was set down, and because there were many different emperors, everyone's always murdering each other in Rome, there's many different emperors in just a very short, quick succession of time. When this all takes place, it's unclear who they're talking about. And it's not important. What's important is he has gone, Bar Kamsa, and informed on the Jews. Right? What did he say? The Jews are rebelling against you. Caesar said to Bar Kamsa, who says? Right? In other words, how can I tell? So Bar Kamsa sets up a little trick. Bar Kamsa said to Caesar, send them a sacrifice and see if they offer it on the altar. Okay, now Bar Kamsa is becoming, I think we liked him at the beginning. He was sort of an innocent party to this. But now, and willing to be flexible with the paying for the dinner so that he wouldn't be embarrassed. But now he's gotten himself into some hot water. You're facing the emperor of Rome. The Roman emperor, in other words, you really went to he didn't start off with the lowest guy. He went right to the top. And the guy at the top is doubting him. So he's becoming implicated, Bar Kamsa, in a big controversy. And decides that the way to defend himself is to tell Caesar, send a sacrifice and see if they offer it in their temple. Caesar went and sent a fine calf in Kamsa's hands. While on the way, Kamsa made a blemish on its upper lip. By the way, it should say Bar Kamsa.
Oh.
It's not Kamsa. While on the way, Kamsa made a blemish on its upper lip, or as some say, on the white of its eye, a place where it is a blemish for us Jews, but not a blemish for them, the Romans. So, welcome to the world of animal sacrifices. There are rules regarding which animals you can offer on the altar. A blemish on the animal, remember, you would think about, buying somebody a gift, but the gift has a crack in it or something wrong with it. It's the same with the sacrifice. Every culture had rules for what kind of sacrifice would be allowed to be presented on the altar and what kind of sacrifice would not be allowed. So Bar Kamsa takes this calf, a gift from the emperor, and he's very smart. He puts a blemish on the animal which would be unacceptable for the Jewish rules of the kind of animal that would be something on the lip or on the eye, but was okay for the Romans. So what is this setting up? Almost a fight over whose ritual laws are better or are more authoritative, the Roman laws or the Jewish laws. And also a fight because the emperor would not regard that there was anything wrong with his sacrifice. His sacrifice was perfect. And yet if the Jews refused to put it on the altar, he might take personal offense. So either he's going to take offense because the Jews are saying that their law is better than the Roman law, or he's going to take personal offense because he will believe that the Jews are not sacrificing his calf because it came from him. That's what makes it wrong. So Bar Kamsa is a conniving little jerk, isn't he? He's got everything set up, but I'm telling you, he's ready to blow up the whole thing over this party. Yes?
Just a point of clarification in my mind. When they say the rabbis, they're really saying the priests of the temple, aren't they?
They absolutely are.
They're not saying rabbis like who make the rabbinic law. They're talking about rabbis who are priests.
They're talking, correct. They're talking about the rabbis who are associated. You see, the word rabbi was just starting to be used at that time. Rabbi means what? Teacher. It's not yet belonging to a certain group. There were rabbis who were close to the priests. They were called the Sadducees. There were rabbis that were against the priests. They were called the Pharisees. There were some who were very against the priests. So I think you should just use the word as the leaders. The leaders at that time. The leaders at the temple are now confronted with a challenge. They have a calf that was sent by Caesar. The rule of the temple is you cannot offer this calf on the altar. It is blemished. What will they do? What does it say? The rabbis thought to offer it for the sake of peace with the Roman king. So the original thought, remember when it says the rabbis, it often means the majority. And it does here. The majority opinion was put it on the altar, be quiet about the lip and the eye. We're going to get ourselves in huge trouble if we don't offer this. We have to be friendly to the Roman Empire. We can't go against Caesar. And this would be a massive offense to him if we don't sacrifice this calf. So let's put it on the altar. Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkula said to the other rabbis, people will say that blemished animals are offered on the altar. So again, we're faced with the lone voice. Doesn't it remind you of Rabbi Eliezer? Rabbi Eliezer's voice, who goes against the rabbinic opinion. But Rabbi Eliezer, his stubbornness, the oven is kosher. But he was being more lenient. Now we have Rabbi Zechariah, who is not being more lenient, he's being more stringent. Going to the rabbis and saying, I know you want to make peace with the Roman emperor, but this is going to be a big problem. We've never accepted animals like this, and people will say that we have no integrity. People will say that our laws don't matter if we take this calf and sacrifice it on the altar. They thought to kill Bar Kamsa so that he would not go and say that the Jews did not bring the sacrifice on the altar. So this Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkulas convinces the rabbis not to offer the sacrifice. But then the rabbis say, okay, well, but then what do we do? We're going to get in big trouble. I know. Let's kill Bar Kamsa. Why would that fix the problem? Because the animal was sent with Bar Kamsa. So since the animal was sent with him, he won't be able to report back to Caesar that we didn't do anything. He's the only one who's not among us, our little group, that knows about this. So let's just get rid of him. I noticed some of you, when you read that, were rather shocked. And that's exactly how you should feel, I think, in this story. That we have characters in this story. And I think that what we're learning is all the characters in this story are prepared to go to extremes to defend their truths. Let me say that again. all the characters in this story so far are characters, in my opinion, who are depicted as willing to go to extremes to defend their truth. The host of the party. I'll pay for my meal. I'll pay for half the party. I'll pay for the whole party. I mean, this is somebody who's willing to go to an extreme to kick his friend out of the party. Bar Kamsa, the same. Remember, I depicted him at the beginning as flexible, but he ain't so flexible anymore once he becomes determined to take down the empire. He's willing to offend the temple rituals. He's willing to create a massive controversy by manipulating the animal in order to get to his truth, in order to accomplish his goals. Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkulas. It's a little blemish. Put the calf on the altar and let's call it a day. No. People will say we're flexible. Can't be flexible. He goes to an extreme. And then the rabbis, too, are prepared to go to an extreme to defend their truth. And to go so far as to offer that maybe we should kill Bar Kamsa. I think it's so important for understanding the story, the lesson and the moral of the story. Important for the times we live in. This is a story of extremists. In the end, who cares who's right and who's wrong? It doesn't matter. Because whatever version that you think is right or wrong, or whatever party you feel is guilty or not guilty, there's no compromise here. There's just people who want to blow everything up. That's why I love Tisha B'Av. I think Tisha B'Av is the most underappreciated holiday in the calendar. We should get rid of Yom Kippur and instead just have Tisha B'Av. When we gather here for Tisha B'Av, it's a handful of people. But which holiday is more important for the dangers of our time? Which holiday speaks more to the conflicts in the world today? I don't think it's Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is about self-improvement. We are the most self-absorbed people who ever lived. But we do a lousy job of compromising with other people, a lousy job of identifying and isolating extremists. We're in a time where we sort of like extremists. And this is a story how everything is a disaster because of people wanting to go to extremes, being completely inflexible. Well, who's heard, who's not heard? Who cares who's heard and who's not heard and who's right and who's wrong? You're willing to kill each other over your version of the truth.
What about the extremisms of the Romans?
Yeah?
Destroying the whole city.
Yeah.
Because and what happens if they did sacrifice the
But I think that is a typical Jewish answer. That's a typical Jewish answer that I personally, no offense, that I personally don't like. If this was a story about the extremism of the Romans, it would be a nice story without a happy ending because we love being united over anti-Semitism. Look at the Jews now. Anti-Semitism, we have a common enemy, let's all go rally, the Romans we hate, the Hamas we hate, that's what brings us together. It's almost like in order to achieve unity, we need the Romans. We need Hamas. You know, you talk about people today, say how beautiful it is that we all are together. I know, but where were you a month ago? Where were you 2 months ago? When the Jewish people was ripping each other apart, we were talking about Israel facing an existential threat because when people can't get along with each other. Hamas did us a favor. I'm not going to say that, but it's almost like they did us a favor by bringing us all together and abandoning all of this stuff that was ripping people apart. Right? And that's why I don't like that answer. You're right. But I think the brilliance of this story is don't blame the Romans for what happened. You see where the story is going. But the reflection, the story is written years later, the reflection on what happened is not the Romans destroyed the temple. It's we are responsible for the events that led to the Romans to the Roman destruction. They were just invited to destroy the temple because of our disunity. Well, there are many people saying we and all the fighting in Jerusalem that happened over the past 6 months invited Hamas. We showed Hamas, look how weak we are. Disorganized. Infighting. Come kill us. Right? And this is not me. I'm saying this is what people are saying, that we invited Hamas to prey on us at a moment of weakness. And that's what this story is. So, I'll still get 5 people coming for Tisha B'Av to hear Megillat Eicha this summer. And I don't know what it's going to take to get the message across, but we just have to keep repeating it over and over again. The greater danger, going back 2,000 years, the greater danger comes from within, not from without. Rabbi Zechariah ben Akula said to the other rabbis, people will say that one who blemishes consecrated animals is put to death. So Rabbi Zechariah ben Akula now becomes the voice of reason. Before, he's the voice of extremism, right? Let's not put the animal on the altar. Now he becomes the voice of reason to the rabbis, saying, "You're going to kill him? People are going to find out why you killed him, and then you'll have blood on your hands, and people will label us all as crazy." I think that the whole confusion with Rabbi Zechariah ben Akulas, and how on some issues he's extreme and some issues he's not, is a real play on human nature. What they're showing is, it's not that Rabbi Zechariah was by his temperament always an extremist. It was because of his convictions. He became an extremist when it was something he believed in. Like the rest of us, most of us are not extremists by nature on everything. But if I can find the issue that you care about, I'll turn you into an extremist quick. So be careful labeling yourself as, I'm even-tempered and calm and I get along with everybody. No, you're not. We just haven't found yet that issue that you're an extremist over. Same thing with Zechariah ben Akulas. Some things he was extreme about, some things he wasn't. The rabbis, some things they cared about, some things they did not. We are all guilty. We all have things that can lead us to become uncompromising. Let's continue. Rabbi Yochanan said, the scrupulousness of Rabbi Zechariah ben Akulas caused our house to be destroyed, burnt our temple, and caused us to be exiled from our land. Rabbi Yochanan is now brought in my opinion, as another extremist. He blames Rabbi Zechariah ben Akulas and nobody else. It's interesting. How does the story begin? It's Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. That's what led to the destruction of Jerusalem. But Rabbi Yochanan doesn't like that. He lays the blame on Rabbi Zechariah ben Akulas and his scrupulousness. For Rabbi Yochanan, the problem is that Rabbi Zechariah didn't go along with the majority. Even if the majority was wrong, he should have just gone along with everybody else. Because At least they had a plan. It was a terrible plan. Kill Bar Kamsa, right? Or put the calf on. But everything that the rabbis conspired to do, Rabbi Zechariah ben Akulas was a thorn in their side. I could just as easily say, thank God for Rabbi Zechariah ben Akulas. He saved Bar Kamsa's life. But Rabbi Yochanan is another view brought in centuries later. Rabbi Yochanan lives much later. But is another view brought in, I think, to pile on to this story. There's blame to go around, and even those who live later continue to argue about this dispute and who really is to blame. And Rabbi Zechariah ben Akulas is really the one at fault, not Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. The emperor sent Nero Caesar against them. So, in other words, the sacrifice was not brought to the altar. Nero is sent to now destroy Jerusalem because the emperor is very offended. You didn't offer my sacrifice. As Nero was coming, he shot an arrow towards the east, and it came and fell in Jerusalem. He then shot an arrow towards the west, and it came and fell in Jerusalem. He shot arrows towards the four winds of heaven. Right? And if you look at the footnote, in every direction. And each time it came and fell in Jerusalem. He said to a certain boy, state me a biblical verse. The child said, quoting a physical verse, and I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel. That's a verse from Ezekiel. Ezekiel lives way before Rome, but some of you might know that Edom, is associated in later Jewish literature with Rome. The Edomites are Rome. So what does this boy cite? What does this boy say? Caesar says, hey, quote me a verse. The first part of the story is he keeps shooting arrows and they keep landing in Jerusalem. What is this? What is the message behind that story? Who controls the winds? Right, so now God or some religious power enters the story and seems to be directing the assault on Jerusalem. Right, so now it's not Rabbi Zechariah ben Akulas or Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, but even God wants Jerusalem destroyed because we have these miraculous events that are happening. The arrow always landing in Jerusalem, and a boy who randomly picks the worst verse ever to recite to Caesar. I will lay my hand on Edom by the people Israel. I mean, just ask a kid, hey, name me one verse in the Bible, and the verse he says is, we're going to kill you. Right? So the worst verse that he could possibly recite, and the one that would obviously anger Nero the most. Nero said to himself, the Holy One, blessed be He, wants to destroy his house and wants to wipe clean his hands with me. So Nero fled and went and converted to Judaism, and Rabbi Meir descended from him. Very, very interesting. God has some way of communicating that Nero picks up on. Instead of Nero being angered by this boy who says, we're going to come and kill you, that's the verse in the Bible, Nero becomes worried. What is he worried about?
That Israel will destroy Rome.
What's that?
That Israel will destroy Rome.
Not that Israel will destroy Rome. What is his fear? The Holy One, blessed be He, wants to destroy His house and wants to wipe clean His hands with me. What does that mean? The Holy One wants to destroy His house, right? Because I keep firing arrows in all directions and they keep heading towards Jerusalem. So it looks like God wants this place destroyed. But I asked this kid, name me a random verse of the Bible. And the verse is, the Jews will kill you for what you have done. Does everyone understand what that means? God wants the house destroyed and wants to wipe His hands of it with me. What is Nero saying? Why does he convert to Judaism?
Protection.
He wants it. Well, what does he not want?
He doesn't want to be blamed by the destruction.
That's right. He doesn't want to be blamed. Nero, for some reason, here is depicted as a believing person. He believes in God. And he figures out that the emperor has sent him to destroy the temple. And he's probably very worried. This is a big deal in any religion, to go out and destroy a temple of another people. So he's playing these sort of games. Romans were famous for this, of fortune, to try and see, should I be doing this or should I not? And this verse that the young boy said scared him. He understood that God wants the temple to be destroyed, but he doesn't want to be the scapegoat. Nero does not want to go down in history as the one who is responsible for the destruction of the temple. Therefore, he flees and runs away. It sounds to me like Romans are more pious than the Jews in this story. The Jews don't seem to ask for miracles or guidance in this situation, but the Romans are God-fearing. Nero is God-fearing and doesn't want to destroy the temple for fear of being blamed. He almost says to God, like, don't you get me involved in this. I understand you want the temple destroyed, but I'm not going to be the one who takes the blame. So instead, he does the complete opposite reaction and converts to Judaism. Yes?
It's almost as if this theme of scapegoating follows all the way through the story.
Who do we blame? Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a huge, very good point. Throughout the story, whose fault is it? Is it Kamsa or Bar Kamsa? Is it Zechariah ben Avkulos? Is it the rabbis? Is it the party host? Right? And again, and nobody, we're looking to blame the destruction of the temple on someone. With this passage here, it sounds like blame really is, it's God who wants the temple destroyed. And it's just a question of who who walking around on 2 feet is the easy one to blame for causing the actual destruction. The emperor then sent Vespasian Caesar against the Jews. He came and sieged Jerusalem for 3 years. In Jerusalem there were 3 men of great wealth: Nakdimon ben Gurion, ben Kalbasavua, and ben Tzitzit Hakeshet. What happened? There's a siege of Jerusalem going on, okay, by Vespasian. Nakdimon ben Gurion, who was so called because the sun continued shining for his sake. Ben Kalba Shabua was so called because anyone who would go into his house hungry as a dog would come out full. Ben Tzitzit HaKesed was called because his fringes used to trail on cushions, the fringes of his talit. Others say he derived the name from the fact that his seat was among those of the nobility of Rome. One of these men said to the people of Jerusalem, I will sustain them with wheat and barley. One said to them, I with wine, oil, and salt. One said to them, and I with firewood. So remember, there's a siege going on, and these three wealthy people in the town, each one is finding a different way to help support the people during the siege. I'll give them food, I'll give them firewood, we'll take responsibility for helping the people because we have a lot of things. And the rabbis praised the offer of wood over the other offers. As Rav Chisda used to hand all his keys to his servant, except the key to the wood storage. As Rav Chisda said, a storehouse of wheat requires 60 stores of wood for fuel. Even though the three people, the way we should read this is we have three people who each want to give different things to help the effort. Wheat and barley, wine, oil, and salt, and firewood. What they could to help. But continuing on the theme of, we're honoring some people, inviting some people, and not inviting other people, and what are we going to fight over? The problem is, who got more covet of all the three? Which one? Ben Tzitzit HaKeshet, right? Ben Tzitzit actually we don't know. We don't know which one gave. I'm assuming it's Ben Tzitzit HaKeshet, but one of them said, I'm going to give the fuel, the firewood. And he got more covet. Because Rav Chisda said, one storehouse of fuel, of wood, is worth 60 of wheat. It's one way of saying, this is what we really need more of. We need more fuel than we need food. These men had enough food and fuel to sustain Jerusalem for 21 years. What is that story about? Any thoughts?
It's more of a political play here about having.
But why introduce this story? Who cares about who gave the fuel? And the key in this story is someone's offer, is Rav Chisda's statement, right? These three men each helped to sustain Jerusalem throughout the famine. But Rav Chisda, a rabbi, treated one of them better than the other two. The picture that is being painted, I think, of Jerusalem is one where there is constant disregard to the sensitivities of others. Bar Kamsa is very offended that he's being kicked out of the party. The rabbis don't do anything. The party host takes him by his neck and throws him out. Three rich people offered to support the community at a difficult time. Rav Chisda says this person's gift is worth 60 times this other person's gift. Jerusalem is described as a city where people don't really treat each other very nicely. And I think that's why this story is added into the dialogue. There were these Biryoni rebels in Jerusalem. We don't know what Biryoni means, it just focused on the word rebels. They called themselves Biryoni. I don't know why. The rabbi said to them, "Let us go out and make peace with the Romans." The Biryoni would not let them. The Biryoni said to the rabbis, "Let us go out, make war, and make war with the Romans." The rabbi said to the Biryoni, "It will not be a success." The Biryoni rose up and burnt the stores of wheat and barley, and there was a famine. Now we have the end of the story that began before with the three honored people. You have all the wheat you need to survive 21 years, right? That's what the Talmud says. In the siege. It's a long time. But what happened to it? Why?
Because they didn't get their own way.
Exactly. It's the same pattern that we've seen since the beginning of the story of extremists willing to take down the whole ship if they didn't get their way. The Biryoni are fighting with the rabbis over, should we rebel? Should we not rebel? Should we make peace? Should we not make peace? And they're so upset by the inability to achieve consensus that they burn all the wheat, and the people are now faced with a famine. Martha, the daughter of Bethus, was the richest woman in Jerusalem. She sent her emissary and said to him, "Go bring me fine flour." We're now getting a bit of a depiction of how bad the famine was. By the time he went, it was sold out. He came and said to her, "There is no fine flour, there's white flour." She said to him, "Go bring me." By the time he went, it was sold out. He came to her and said, "There's no white flour, there's dark flour." She said to him, "Go bring me." By the time he went, it was sold out. He came to her and said to her, "There's no dark flour, there's barley flour. Go bring me." By the time he went, it was sold out. She had taken off her shoes. She said, "I will go out and see if I can find anything to eat." Some dung stuck to her foot, and she died. What's this story saying?
There is no food in the orchard.
There's no food. I think that's the main point of this story. It's to depict the chaos of Jerusalem, how people who were once wealthy are brought to shame because of the famine that's going on. The depiction is a scene of desperation. There's no food, and people just can't deal with the inhumanity and the indignity of the whole situation. Yes?
Is it also kind of aristocracy that she wouldn't go out right at the beginning and check it out?
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe maybe she shouldn't have sent her servant, and she's getting her comeuppance by being.
But she takes off her shoes.
Yeah. This is there's lots of papers written about this story as to what might be insinuated here, because I agree with you, it's a bit, the story is odd. The story is odd. I think it's just, at surface level, it's a description of what is going on, the bad stuff that is going on in Jerusalem. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai quoted the following verse in regard to her: "The tender and delicate woman among you, which would not adventure to set the sole of her foot upon the ground." It's a verse from Deuteronomy that I think is being used to almost make fun of her and say, you were too good to go out and get the flour yourself. Now you will have no flour to eat at all. Some said that she ate Rabbi Tzadok's figs and became sick and died. For Rabbi Tzadok observed fast for 40 years, in order that Jerusalem might not be destroyed. And he became so thin that when he ate anything, the food could be seen from outside. When he wanted to restore himself, they would bring him figs. He would suck the juice and throw the rest away. Okay, possible that she ate Rabbi Tzadok's figs, and that's why she died. When Martha, the daughter of Baitos, was dying, she brought out all her gold and silver and threw it in the street. She said, "What do I need this for?" And this is as it is written in the Bible, "They shall cast their silver in the street." So I really like the way this ends. The Martha Bar Beitos story, think of it now, we'll end here. Think of now what the message is of her story. Again, she wants flour. She goes out when her servant can't find anything, steps in dung and dies. And some say before she died, she took all her money and threw it around and said, "What good is this for me now, right, when I don't even have anything to eat?" That might help us understand why this story is in here. Help me understand it.
Well, what is the good of the money? You can't eat money or silver, but there's no food in the city.
Yes.
So
it's a critique of what? Martha ben Beitos, the wealthiest woman in Jerusalem, who dies because she sets her foot in some dung, or maybe she ate a fig from a poor man, right? What's the end of the story here? What's the...
That money can give you peace, safeguard.
Yeah.
It's just nice to have, but if you don't have peace, if you don't have shalom body within your own people, and with others outside of your own people, then in the end, your life is not really...
Right. Which I think is a beautiful sort of continuation of the story of the three men and all their wealth. Right? We have two stories here of wealthy people. The three rich men and the one rich woman. The three rich men are using their wealth and their good nature to be able to help the people survive the siege. But it is all destroyed by extremism. The extremism of somebody who wants to fight the Romans and burns all of the food they have in storage. Then you have a very wealthy woman, Martha Bar Beitos, who just wants flour, that she needs something to eat. She has plenty of money to buy all the flour she needs, but the money is no good because all of this extremism has led to a famine. Money cannot get you out of, and that's why I think it's a beautiful story, how sometimes we think that just because a nation or a family or a person is wealthy, they are allowed to, or they won't be affected by inner strife. How many times in civil wars do you see those who are more fortunate guarding their fortunes and blocking themselves off from conflicts so that no matter who wins, they'll be able to survive wealthy? It's what tends to happen when you have disputes. You guard what you have, if you're fortunate enough to have. And I think these stories say you will not, even the richest people, the men and Martha ben Beitos, were not able to seclude and protect and hide themselves from the chaos, from the extremism, from the fractioning of everybody within Jerusalem. she was not able to hide. She was not able not to be affected. She could not walk on the streets without sacrificing her life in the process. So money wasn't going to save you, and when people are fighting with each other, so far it looks like no matter who you are going to get caught up in the whole craziness of it. By the way, I also think that's important. The idea of a siege. And we're thinking a lot about sieges right now, but why the siege? Why do you think the siege is important in this story? I can leave this for next time, but just something to think about is a siege is another way of saying you can't leave, you can't depart. This was a fight between what started out as a fight of two people that you may not even know, but it ended up being a dispute that engulfed the whole city, and there was no way to get out. So not only would your money not help you, your passport won't help you either, because you can't get out of a besieged area. So the stage is being set now for a calamity that will befall Jerusalem, and themes that we hear in the story are who's to blame, and why is there nobody able to find a compromise, and everybody is implicated. That's what I think the ingredients are so far to this disaster that is about to ensue. We'll complete this story next week. Thank you, everyone. More to come.